Hey guys, welcome to Animation Juice. My name is Richard and it's Monday, which means it's time for another animation tutorial. And in this week's tutorial I'm going to show you how to set up your movie clips in Flash to create the looping walks that we've been working on in the previous weeks, and then ultimately how you can create loopable animated GIFs to post anywhere, for instance on Twitter. It's a great and really useful technique. So let's jump in. Hey guys, so here we are in Flash. Now, like I said, this is going to be more of a how-to in Flash. We've been looking in the last few weeks, we've been focusing specifically on the animation. But in this week's tutorial, I'm going to slow down ever so slightly and just make sure that I'm clearly explaining how I'm setting up the Flash document to create these and demonstrate these walk cycles, because that's, whilst I always put the emphasis on the animation itself regardless of the software, the tool does have its place, and there are a few tips and tricks that I am using to help visualize and demonstrate these walk cycles. And then ultimately I'm creating loopable animated GIFs of these things and post them on Twitter and everywhere else, where it looks like the flour sack is walking on the spot. So that's what I'm going to show you, my setup in Flash and how I do that in this week's Movie Monday. So this is the walk cycle, the flour sack walk cycle that we did a couple of weeks ago of this pretty happy flour sack. And of course he's walking, let me just move this, make sure you can see it. And of course he's just walking across the screen. Now, so if I just show you how this Flash document is set up. So this animation is actually in a graphics clip. Now, what that means is, if I double click on this guy, this is the graphics clip. Now we're inside this graphics clip, and this is where the animation is taking place. If I turn that layer off. So one step, two step, and that's all the animation that we're doing. So that is in a graphics clip. Now, in order to create a graphics clip, before you even start animating, what you need to do is go to new symbol, insert new symbol, and then make sure, give it a name and make sure that your type is set to graphics. And then you animate within that graphics clip. That's the first very important thing when doing these walk cycles, because what that allows us to do is only create two of the steps, the left foot, the right foot, bang, bang, and then we're able to take that entire animation and shift it along the stage to do the next couple of steps, and then shift it again for the final two steps. So that's the first important thing, animating within a graphics clip as opposed to on just the top of the timeline. So let me show you. So this is the graphics clip where the animation is playing out. Now there are a couple of settings that you need to make sure it's set to. The first one is come down here to your properties panel, or wherever your properties panel is. If you can't see your properties panel, go to Window, Properties, make sure that's ticked. And there are a couple of things you need to make sure that's set. Make sure it's set to play once, and the first frame is set to 1. So what that means is it's going to start, whatever's inside your graphics clip is going to play on this main timeline from that frame, which is frame 1. If we were to set this to, let's say, 10, it's going to start from frame 10, which is that frame there. You can see it starting from that frame there. And the play once part means it's going to, wherever this number, wherever it's set to play from, so if we set that back to 1, it's going to play the animation, whatever's inside it, just once. And then it's going to stop. if we were to set this animation to play from frame 20, let's say, it's going to play from frame 20 until the end of the animation. So it just stops there. You can see, bang, it just stops, because frame 20 means it's starting here, and it's only got to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 frames until that's the end of the animation within the graphics clip. And then it'll just stay on that last frame because we set it to play once. It's not going to loop round. It can loop round if you set your options to loop, and it'll just play from whatever the first frame number is, and will loop around. If I set this to loop, you'll now see that as opposed to stopping there, it carries on and just loops around back to the beginning again. You see, loop, and it just loops around. But for our purposes, we want to set this to play once and set that to frame 1. So that's the first thing. Graphics clip, play once, first frame, number 1. And then what you've got to do is you've got to make sure that your animation is actually loopable. And the easy way to do that is whatever your first frame is. For instance, if you start with the down, or even if you start with the contact position, as Richard Williams advises in his animation survival kit, when you are animating, what I would do is whatever this first frame is that you're starting with, make sure you copy it and drag it to the end of your clip, so that you're always animating towards the first frame of the clip, and then you know it's going to loop. So that's a very important point as well. So that however long your clip is, you know that it will loop. So how do you get it to make it look like he's walking across the stage? Well, once you've got your first couple of steps, so here we've got our animation of a 2-step walk, left, right, in a graphics clip, and we're happy with that animation. We can now grab this graphics clip from the main timeline and shift it. If you hit Command C and then go to, make sure you know how many frames are in an animation. In this case, it's 28 frames long for the 2-step loop. So if you go to frame 29, which is where we want it to loop again, copy and paste that graphics clip and paste it here. Let me delete these. Set a keyframe, a blank keyframe. You do that by right-clicking, convert to blank keyframe, and then if you hit Command Shift V, what that's going to do is going to paste your original graphics clip in place, and you can see it's just going to play twice. Now there's the first clip, there's our second graphics clip. So you've pasted your frame, but it's pasted it in place. What you need to do now is grab that clip, just select it, hold Shift, and drag it across the timeline. That's by holding Shift, it's going to make sure it goes across in a straight line. And then you just need to make sure you do some, you see that's doesn't look like he's walking across the screen. Turning on the onion skin tool will help with this just lining up. And we want to set where he's about to plant his foot here. So we want to make sure that we should want to line up the heels, because he's planting with his heel first. So let's just stick that heel, it's about there. And now, oops, looks like it's jumping a little. Let's nudge it back a little again. I'm just using the arrow keys on your keyboard just to nudge it back and forward. And let's just nudge it back a little bit. It just wants to feel like he's there. It looks like he's catching himself now. And so this is now the beginning of the clip again. We've just shifted that the entire animation along the timeline so that it loops again. And now it looks like he carries on walking. There he goes, loop, and then loop. Now he's playing again. And we can do the exact same thing again. If you copy the graphics clip again by holding Command C, making another frame. We know that the animation is 28 frames long, so move 28 frames along your timeline and set another keyframe. So 228 is 56. So we want to set another keyframe at frame 57. So right click, convert to blank keyframe, and then hold Command Shift V to paste it in place. And so now that's pasted it on top of the original keyframe again. You'll see it jumps back to where it was originally playing from. Like that. So all we've got to do is drag it again along the timeline. Let's just turn on the onion skin tool so we sort of have a target. Just hold Shift, drag the clip so it's dragging in a horizontal line, and just screw it back and forwards to it. It looks like he's sliding back a little bit there. You can see that his heel is slipping back, which doesn't look convincing. So let's just nudge it by using the arrow keys on the keyboard just to the right a little bit, with the right arrow key. Again, it looks like it's sliding too much backwards. Let's just nudge it a little bit further to the right, and that looks good to me. So when played now in sequence, it looks like he's taking 6 or 7 full steps across the screen, when actually the only animation that we're doing are 2 steps, and we're duplicating that looping animation once and then twice along the screen. Now there are 2 major benefits really of using graphics clips in this way. The first one is you can just animate on this main timeline. Forget that we're in a graphics clip now. You could just animate all of this on the main timeline, just not in a graphics clip, just on the main timeline. And then you can do the exact same thing to shift the keyframes along, but instead of just copying and pasting one keyframe which houses all 28 of our animation frames, you would have to turn this little guy on edit multiple frames. Select the whole thing, turn edit multiple frames on, and you get these little brackets at the top of your timeline. Make sure that you drag the brackets so that they encompass the entire animation. Hit Command A few times just to make sure that it is selecting all of the frames. Flashes can be a little bit quirky, so you just got to make sure all the frames are selected. Right click and click copy frames, and come to the end of the timeline. Right click again and paste frames, and you'll see you'll get the duplicate of the frames. And what you'll need to do now is, like we shifted the graphics clip along the right, you'll need to do exactly the same thing, but with all 28 of these frames. And it's possible, you just got to make sure that the brackets, the edit multiple frames brackets, are now selecting these pasted frames. Hit Command A a couple of times to ensure that all of the keyframes are selected, and then drag them across the timeline. Now this might be a little bit more tricky to line up the first frame with the last frame. In fact, that looks quite good. Maybe just nudge them all back a little bit. In order to nudge them all back again, make sure that you hit Command. You make sure you hit the edit multiple frames thing to get these brackets. Command A a few times and just nudge it back again. If you don't hit the edit multiple frames thing and you only, I've done this 1,000 times, it's incredibly annoying. If I want to shift the entire animation along, you must select the edit multiple frames and Command A a few times to make sure you're selecting all of the frames, all the 28 frames as a group. Otherwise, sometimes if you just select these keyframes like this, if you set the keyframes like this, I think, okay, I now set the keyframe, then nudge it back a little bit. What you're only actually doing is you're only nudging back this first keyframe. You're not selecting all these guys. So that's really important if you do it this way. I don't advise doing it this way because it's a bit finicky, and there's much more potential for error because you're dealing with so many frames. And like I say, Flash is a little bit quirky. If you don't remember to turn on the edit multiple frames tools, you'll have problems with jumping frames. It's a bit harder to line the first frame up with the last frame, So I don't advise using it this way. It's much easier just to do it once in a graphics clip and copy that one frame which has the graphics clip on it, and then nudge it to the end of, translate it across the screen on the X. So that's the first advantage. The second advantage is because we've got 3 keyframes here, which means that we've got 3 instances of that same graphic clip. If you go to your library, which is, mine's on the left here, if you can see your library, just make sure that in window you've got the library option selected. You'll see that in our library we've just got one graphics clip, and that's the graphic clip that obviously our animation is in. If you double click on that, it'll just take us to our animation, just as if when we double click on the graphics clip on the timeline, it takes us to that exact same animation. It's the exact same thing, it's just 2 different ways of accessing those keyframes. 2 different ways of accessing your animation. And so the second benefit of animating within a graphics clip is that if you want to make tweaks to the animation, let's just say, you've translated it across and it looks now like he's walking across the screen, but you want to adjust some part of his walk. You want to, maybe you want to tidy the line work slightly, or you want to just adjust the movement of the arms, whatever you want to adjust. The director comes and he wants it to change this part, you want him to make it a little less jaunty, a little less ecstatic and more subdued. All you would then have to do is change that animation and make the changes, whatever they are, for this first couple of steps. 1, 2. And because those changes will now be applied to this keyframe, this instance of the graphic clip, and this instance of the graphics clip. Let me give you a really obvious example. If I come into the animation and let's just put a really big red smear on frame 1. Because I've done that smear, because we've got 3 instances of the same graphics clip, that red smear is now going to show up in this clip, and it's going to show up in this clip. You see, all you're going to do is change it in one of the clips and it applies it to all of the instances of that clip on the timeline. And you don't get that benefit of, it's much sweeter to work and make changes to your animation as opposed to actually physically duplicating these keyframes across the timeline. You end up with, as opposed to 28 unique frames, you end up with 28 times 3, whatever that is, so 84. You end up with 84 unique frames. And if you want to change the animation, you've got to change it here in this 2-step loop, in this here, this 2-step loop, and somewhere in here, this 2-step loop. It's not conducive to make changes. It's not going to speed up your workflow. In this way, graphics clips are gonna speed you along, help you out more, for those 2 reasons. It's much easier to handle 1 clip as opposed to 28 clips, and if you want to make changes, it's going to change it to all instances of that graphics clip, and it's really helpful. So that is how I have set up the Flash timeline when I'm doing these walk cycles, and that's how I set it up for this walk, and that's how I set it up for last week's sad flower sat walk. It's the exact same thing. You do your 2-step loop in a graphics clip, and then you translate that graphics clip across the timeline, matching the first frame with the last frame. You do that however many times you want it to walk across the screen. So that's the first point. Now, when I am displaying the walk in the video, and they are on Twitter, I've created a loopable animated GIF, and it looks like the flour sack is walking on the spot. Okay, so here's the looping clip of this flour sack on the spot. Play this. See, there he is, just walking on the spot. Now, previously on this one, he walked across the screen. but to save space and to just have an indefinite loop, I wanted to have him look like he's just walking on the spot. And in order to do that, it's quite simple. What you need to do is copy your graphics clip, and I like to make a new document just because I like to keep things quite separate. I want the animation tutorial in one file where it's walking across the screen, and then this animated, which will be an animated GIF to be used in various social media places. I want to make in a separate file, mainly just for organisation purposes. So just come and make whatever your default thing is. I'm working in CS5, so it's quite old now, so which is just action script 3. So just click new, and then what you want to do is just paste your graphics clip, and here it is. Now we know that the graphics clip is 28 frames long. There are 28 frames of animation within this graphics clip. So the first thing I want to do is spread out. I want to create 28 frames on this main timeline, because otherwise, whilst this animation, the thing with the graphics clip is, you need to provide it with the number of, if you want to play the animation completely, you need to provide it with that number of frames on the main timeline. Otherwise, it just sits there, unable to. If I play now, see, it's just, there is animation there, but we're just not able to see it because it needs the time, it needs the frames on the main timeline to be able to display and play through those animation things. So I'm going to go to frame. We know that there are 28 frames of this animation, this two-step loop. So I want to go to frame 28 on the main timeline and hit F5. And what that's going to do is put in 28 frames. F5 just creates new frames. So now we've spread out those keyframes, and now we can see he's looping. But he's walking forward in space. We want to make him look like he's walking on the spot. So what we need to do is convert each one of these 28 frames into a clip. Now you can do it in here again, but I don't want to mess with the animation loop. That's all been sorted, done and dusted. That's in the graphics clip. It's safe, hidden away. What I want to do is just I want to create 28 instances or 28 keyframes of our graphics clip, and you'll see why in a second. But in order to do that, just grab the entire timeline, the 28 frames, and hit F6, and you're going to get 28 keyframes. So this is where it's really important that your graphics clip is set to play once in the properties panel, because when you grab all your keyframes, grab all your 28 frames and hit F6, it'll convert, if it's set to play once, it'll convert all of your keyframes to keyframes and still look like it's playing through the animation. So that frame 9 is set to a keyframe, and it's also set to the 9th frame of the animation within here. So it's displaying this frame here. Frame 10 is displaying frame 10 within the graphics clip. Frame 20 is displaying frame 20 in the graphics clip, and so on. I hope that's clear. Okay, so the reason that we want to have all of these frames playing through but as graphics clips is because we want to nudge this guy back. Now there's a little bit of trial and error with this, but the point is we want to, as opposed to walking on the spot, we want frame 2 to be ever so slightly back. So I'm just going to hit it back 3 times. And we want frame 3 to be back even more. So I'm going to hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 because it wants to be. We've nudged this frame back 3 frames, so we need to nudge this frame back 3 frames plus another 3 frames. This wants to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 because we've nudged this one back 3 frames, we nudged this one back 3 frames plus another 3 frames, this one is nudged back 3 frames plus 3 frames plus its 3 frames. It gets a little bit complicated, but basically what we're trying to do is we just want to make sure, we want to make it look like all of this animation is looking like it's playing out on the same spot. And so it's just about nudging the frames back a little bit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. You need to know your 3 times table for this. I've just chosen 3 frames because it's going to depend on your animation entirely. But I chose 3 frames because when I nudged this one back 3 frames, it looked like 3 frames was enough to make this look like it was still on the same spot. And you can see just by the frames that we've done so far, it looks like it's playing through on the spot. You see, the floor is sliding backwards, and then this is where we got to. So we've got 21. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 1, 2, 3. So it's always. Oh, hang on. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so that's 24. So this one must be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, plus another 3 frames, 25, 26, 27, and so on and so forth. Now you can grab this, the Edit Multiple Frames tool, and shift this slot. So if where we got to this frame here. So if you can turn the Edit Multiple Frames tool on, make sure your brackets are encompassing the range of frames you want to move as a group. Hit Command A a few times just to make sure that you're selecting all of the frames within the bracketed area, and then you can so we got to 24, didn't we? So no, we got to 27. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27. So the next one is 30. So you could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. And then just shift the brackets. So now we're doing the next frame. So now all we're going to do is shift these back by 3 because we've already shifted the whole group by 30. 1, 2, 3. Let's go. No. Decrease the size of the bracket by 1 frame. Command A. 1, 2, 3. And you see we're just 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. You see all I'm doing is I'm just reducing the size of the bracket by 1 frame each time, making sure I'm hitting Command A to select all, when all the frames are selected within the bracket because they turn blue, and then nudging them all back by 3 frames. This is probably the quick way to do it. So again, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And it's just a case of doing this until it looks like it's walking on the spot. Now this is what it looks like so far. It looks like it's walking on the spot. So when you've gone through the entire animation, nudging all of the frames back a little bit, you end up with this. This is the one that I did for last 2 weeks ago, the looping cycle, and it just looks like we've nudged all the frames back so that it looks like he's walking on the spot. So once you've done that, then the next part, to make the animated GIF, all you're going to do is go to File, Export, Export Movie. In the format box, make sure you've got animated GIF selected. Give it a name. Let's call this number 2. Save. This is just whatever your document size is. So I just click match the screen, and it'll just export the full document size. All of this is fine. Just leave all of this should be the default setting, so there's no real need to change this. And then you can just hit OK, and it's just going to export that GIF. So there's the animated looping GIF that we've just saved out, and this is really you can save them out as movie clips. The animated GIF is useful for social media, especially Twitter. It's really lightweight in terms of file sizes, only 54 kilobytes, so it's really tiny, but that is how you create your loop cycle of, in this case, the walk. So I hope this has been more of a technical session. I think they're useful to throw in every now and again because, like I said, the emphasis is on the animation. The animation is the most important thing, despite the tool being software, Flash. The tool could be clay, could be pen and paper, could be CGI, 3D animation. Tools differ, but the animation really is, the animation principles that we've been learning are the most important thing. So I will throw, but like I said, the tool that you're using does have some idiosyncrasies and tips and tricks that are useful to learn and understand, just to help speed up your work for a little bit. So every now and again I will throw in these sort of little tool-specific Flash tutorials. So I hope this has been really useful, and I hope so. We've looked at how the importance of graphics clips and how it's very useful to animate within a graphics clip, because then you get the flexibility of being able to change the animation once in that graphics clip and have it pervade through all of the instances of the graphics clip throughout your timeline. And we've also looked at how to create a looping on-the-spot walk cycle, this is quite useful for games as well. If you were making platform games or something like that, where you want it to look like it's just running on the spot, and then the coders will then animate the backgrounds, usually the things that move in those type of games. But so I hope this has been really useful, just to make sure that we're on the same page and you really understand just how I set up my Flash files when I'm doing these walk cycles and walking animation tutorials. But I animate like this most of the time. I will animating in graphics clips, getting into the habit of animating graphics clip in Flash is a good habit to get into, because it's a very flexible way of animating. So that's it. So that's it for this episode of Move It Monday. I hope you've enjoyed it, and hope it's been a useful insight into the Flash workflow, especially when we're doing these looping walk cycle tutorials. If you like this video, make sure to let me know by leaving a like and a comment below, and make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest videos as they come out. Until next week's Move It Monday, have a great week guys, and I'll see you later.